I was 32 when I realized I had become invisible in my own marriage. My name doesn't matter here because what I'm about to share could belong to any woman who has ever loved too much and received too little in return. For years I tried to convince myself that silence was just another form of survival, that swallowing the pain was easier than speaking it out loud. But silence, I learned, doesn't heal, it corrodes. It eats you from the inside until one day you wake up a stranger to yourself. Julie was my wife. For 8 years we were bound by vows that at first felt unbreakable. We wanted a family, a home, something that could withstand the storms of time. But when fertility treatments failed us, something in her spirit collapsed. And when she gave up on that dream, it felt like she gave up on us. The affection that once came naturally withered into polite distance, like we were housemates performing a ritual neither of us believed in anymore. Then her sister moved in. What was supposed to be a temporary stay turned into an invasion. She came with her 2 kids and her endless drama filling every corner of our house with noise, chaos, and disrespect. I remember the first time her sister mocked me in front of everyone, throwing barbs at my masculinity, at my worth. Julie just smirked and said, "Oh, stop, he's sensitive." They laughed together while my chest burned with humiliation. That moment should have been my warning, but I stayed. I stayed because love makes fools of us. And I still clung to the woman Julie once was. The woman who used to look at me with pride instead of contempt. But it only got worse. Soon I wasn't even sleeping in my own bed. Julie would let her sister and the kids take over our room, while I found scraps of sleep on the couch or in the spare room. Imagine being exiled from your own space, watching strangers claim what was supposed to be yours, and the one person who vowed to protect you turning a blind eye. I endured it all, telling myself it was temporary. But deep down I knew something inside me was breaking. The breaking point came at a family barbecue, one I wasn't even told about. I came home that day to find my backyard full of laughter, smoke from the grill, relatives drinking and chatting like it was their home, not mine. I stood there, an uninvited guest in my own life. Julie smiled with her parents, her glass raised, not even noticing my arrival. And then it happened. Her sister's voice cut through the air, sharp and cruel. "You know, if she disappeared tomorrow, I don't think anyone would even notice." The laughter that followed felt like 1,000 knives. Even Julie chuckled as if my existence was a joke to be shared. My cheeks burned, but I forced a smile, raised my drink and whispered, "Challenge accepted." They thought I was joking. They had no idea those words were a vow. That night, after the guests left and the house grew quiet, I packed a small bag, a few clothes, my documents, some cash, and I placed the signed divorce papers on the kitchen counter with a yellow sticky note that read, "Notice me yet." Then I walked out, locking the door behind me, leaving the life I had built, the love I had wasted, and the woman who had let me wither away in silence. I disappeared that night, not in rage, not in chaos, but in icy clarity. For years I had been fading, unseen, unheard, but now my absence would be louder than any words I could ever say. The first few days after I left felt unreal, like I was floating outside my own body. I checked into a small motel an hour away, the kind of place no one would think to look for me. The sheets smelled of bleach, the neon sign buzzed outside my window, and yet for the first time in years, I slept soundly. No mocking laughter from the living room, no footsteps of children barging into my space, no weight of Julie's indifference pressing on my chest. Just silence, glorious healing silence. I thought maybe they wouldn't notice. Maybe her sister was right that my absence would barely register. But the calls started the very next morning. First Julie, then her mother, then even her father. They all wanted to know where I was, why I had vanished, how I could walk out without a word. The irony nearly made me laugh. For years I had begged to be seen, to be heard, and they dismissed me as overly sensitive. And now when I finally chose absence, I had become the center of their world. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I watched as the voicemails piled up, each one more desperate than the last. Julie's voice cracked in the third one. "Please just talk to me. Don't do this." The woman who once smirked at my humiliation now sounded hollow, frightened. But I wasn't ready to forgive, not when the wounds were still raw. I needed her to sit in the silence I had lived with for years. I needed her to understand the void she had created. The world outside my marriage looked different than I remembered. I reconnected with old friends, people Julie had subtly pushed me away from because she claimed they took up too much of our time. I met them for coffee, shared laughter, told pieces of my story. And with every conversation I felt more like myself. Like a man who had worth, who wasn't the butt of cruel jokes or an afterthought at his own dinner table. 2 weeks passed before I finally returned, not to reconcile, but to retrieve the rest of my belongings. When I pulled into the driveway, the house that once felt suffocating now looked like a stage after the play had ended, empty and meaningless. Julie was on the porch, her eyes red, her hands trembling as she reached for me. "You can't just walk away like this," she whispered. But I could, and I had. Inside the house was a wreck. Dishes piled high, toys scattered everywhere, her sister lounging on the couch as if it were hers. She didn't even glance at me, just rolled her eyes. "Oh, look, the ghost decided to show up." Her words cut, but they no longer pierced the way they once did. I looked at Julie instead, silently daring her to defend me. She didn't. She just looked away. That was all the confirmation I needed. I packed in silence, moving through the rooms like a stranger in a museum of my former life. Julie followed me, pleading, offering apologies that came too late. "I didn't mean it," she said. "It was just a joke." But betrayal rarely comes in grand gestures. It comes in the laughter that follows cruelty, in the silence of someone who should have stood by your side. As I zipped up my last bag, I turned to her one final time. "You told me once I was too sensitive. But sensitivity is what makes us human. It's what makes love real. You taught me that in this house love was conditional and respect was optional. But I won't live like that anymore." Her tears fell, but I felt nothing. No rage, no longing, just a quiet finality. I walked out the door, and this time I didn't look back. Because sometimes revenge isn't about burning bridges in fury. Sometimes it's about walking away so completely that the people who underestimated you are left choking on the ashes of their own cruelty. In the weeks that followed, I expected the weight of loneliness to crush me. Instead, I found it strangely liberating. I rented a small apartment downtown, just one bedroom with creaky wooden floors and a window that overlooked the streetlights. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every decision, every detail, every moment belonged to me, not to Julie, not to her sister, not to anyone else. The silence that once felt suffocating now became my companion. I filled it with music I hadn't played in years, books I had been told were a waste of time, and late-night walks where the city air felt like freedom against my skin. I started therapy, something I had always wanted but never had time for in my marriage. My therapist listened without judgment, validating the pain I had carried in silence. For the first time in a long time I felt seen. Meanwhile, the calls from Julie didn't stop. If anything, they grew more frantic. Her tone shifted from anger to sorrow to bargaining. "I'll ask my sister to leave. We can start over. I'll be better." But with every message I heard, the same thing: fear of losing me, not love for me. She didn't miss me. She missed the version of me that tolerated everything. Then one afternoon, a mutual friend reached out. "Do you know your wife's been telling people you abandoned her? That you just walked out for no reason?" The words made my stomach twist, but they didn't surprise me. Julie had always been good at spinning narratives, making herself the victim. What she didn't realize was that I had the truth tucked safely away. The signed divorce papers I'd left behind, the note that said, "Notice me yet," and the years of neglect etched into my memory. I didn't rush to defend myself. Instead, I let the whispers travel. Because lies, like weeds, eventually choke themselves out when there's no soil left to grow in. And sure enough, people began to notice the cracks. Her sister bragged too loudly at family gatherings about running the house. Her parents started asking why Julie had let things spiral so badly, and slowly the sympathy she craved began to dry up. But my focus was no longer on Julie. My revenge wasn't in watching her crumble, it was in building myself back up. I started a new job in a field I actually loved, something I had put off because Julie thought it was unstable. I made friends with colleagues who valued my work and respected my voice. I even found myself laughing again, real laughter, the kind that comes from the belly and surprises you with its strength. One evening, months after I had left, I ran into Julie unexpectedly at a grocery store. She looked tired, her eyes hollow, her once proud posture slouched under invisible weight. When she saw me, she froze, then whispered, "You look happy." And I was. I didn't gloat, didn't spit venom. I just smiled softly and said, "I am." Then I walked past her, the cartwheels squeaking beneath me, leaving her standing there with the echo of what she had lost. Because the truth is, the best revenge isn't screaming or fighting or proving a point. The best revenge is becoming everything they told you you'd never be: whole, free, unbreakable. And as I carried my groceries up the stairs of my little apartment that night, I realized I had done exactly that. It's been over a year since that night at the barbecue, the night I was erased with a joke and reborn in silence. Looking back now, I don't see myself as a victim anymore. I see a woman who walked through fire, blistered and scarred, but not destroyed. Julie did try to reach me again months later. She sent a long email, paragraphs of apologies and explanations. She said she had been blinded by her sister's influence, by her own bitterness over the life we couldn't build together. She said she missed me, that she was ready to change. I read every word carefully, then closed the laptop without replying. Because forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. I could forgive her in my heart, wish her peace, and still never let her near me again. Her sister, from what I hear, eventually moved out. Without me as the silent scapegoat, the tension between them grew unbearable. That was their downfall, not mine. And maybe that's the truest kind of karma, watching the very house of cruelty collapse under its own weight, while you stand far away untouched. As for me, my life is simpler now, but it's also fuller. I wake up every morning in a space that belongs entirely to me, without fear of mockery or dismissal. I've built friendships stronger than family ties, people who remind me daily that I am worthy of respect and love. And I've learned that invisibility was never my fate. It was their failure to see me. Sometimes late at night, I still hear the echo of that cruel laughter. It flickers like an old scar, a memory that tries to remind me of who I used to be. But then I breathe deeply, touch the steady rhythm of my heart, and remember I chose myself. I walked away. And in doing so, I became visible again, not to them, but to me. To anyone listening who has ever been belittled, dismissed, or made to feel small, hear me when I say this. You are not invisible. You are not weak for feeling deeply. And you don't need anyone's permission to walk away from the places where your light is dimmed. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is disappear from their story and start writing your own. If my story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. And leave me a comment. I want to hear your story too. Because healing begins when we remind each other that we are not alone.